Russia, worn down by the long war, is trying super hard to look tough to the outside world. Check this out. On October 19, 2023, at Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative 10th anniversary event, they made a real show of having an aide carry the Cheget, their nuclear briefcase, sending a clear message to the Western alliance. And get this, on the same day, the Russian parliament unanimously voted to withdraw from the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, basically flexing their nuclear muscles. Mess with us, and we'll both go down together. In April 2024, the US and Japan pushed for a UN Security Council resolution to ban dangerous nuclear weapons competition in space. The idea was to prevent the kind of accidental stuff that could happen if countries started putting nukes in space, like during the Cold War. But here's what went down. Out of the 15 Security Council members, 13 voted yes, Russia said no, and China just sat on the fence with an abstention. So yeah, it didn't pass. China's jumping on the bandwagon too, with everyone getting all aggressive. The UK's Guardian is calling China's surge in military operations the new normal under Xi Jinping. Their military buildup has been freaking out neighboring countries for quite a while now. North Korea has been keeping up their military provocations ever since the Korean War. If you look at the data from the Korea Institute for National Unification, from December 2022, there's been a steady increase in their missile activities. Comparing it to the eras of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il, you can see that Kim Jong-un has been launching way more missiles than his predecessors. When Russia, China, and North Korea kept building up their military power, Europe naturally had to respond. In early 2022, Germany announced they'd spend more than 2% of their GDP on defense. Now, that's a big deal, because Germany's been getting the side-eye from the international community about military spending ever since they started World War II. But when the war broke out right next door in Ukraine, bam! They suddenly had the perfect excuse to boost their military budget. The UK's gone even further, saying they'll bump up their defense spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. And France? They're planning to increase theirs by 36% over 7 years from 2024 to 2030. Everyone around the world is shouting about being a strong country. Putin's doing it. Xi Jinping's doing it. Zelensky's doing it. Trump did it. Olaf Scholz is doing it. Tsai Ing-wen's doing it. And Kishida's doing it too. At this point, it's hard to even tell where it all started. Everyone's just jumping on the bandwagon. Sure, Korea's defense industry is making big bucks by seizing this opportunity, but we can't help but worry about where this is all heading. According to data released by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, in April 2023, global military spending is clearly on the rise. Here's the crazy part. Even though global prices are skyrocketing, economies are struggling, the planet is groaning from climate disasters, and AI is sucking up all our water and electricity. Countries are still pouring money into their militaries. Sure, flexing military muscle might help with national security, but get this. Most countries used to spend about 1 to 1.5% of their GDP on defense, except for the US and China. But now, lots of countries are pushing for over 2%. That's nearly double. The two countries actually fighting are having an absolutely horrible time. First off, as the war drags on, they're running out of young people to draft. In Ukraine, soldiers are deserting left and right, even though that comes with a 12-year prison sentence if you're caught. But here's the thing. They'd rather do prison time than get drafted, because getting drafted looks like a one-way ticket to either death or disability. Russia isn't doing much better. They issued a mobilization order, but that wasn't enough, so they had to bring in North Korean troops. And the economies of both countries are completely ruined now. Ukraine's main source of income was selling agricultural products from its fertile land, but it's not in a situation where farming is possible. Russia's been scraping together all its resources to sell to China, which has totally thrown off the power balance as they become way too dependent on China. Plus, in Russia, the war economy has taken over the civilian economy so much that they've developed this thing called deathnomics, where the economy actually grows as more soldiers die. Young people recruited into the Russian military get higher salaries and life insurance payments than regular Russian youth. If they die in battle, their families get 14.5 million rubles. That's about $150,000, which is more than what an average citizen would earn in their lifetime. Add military bonuses and insurance on top of that, and the actual compensation is even bigger. In other words, the death of a soldier is far more beneficial to the national economy than working soundly for a lifetime. You go to the battlefield with life insurance from the state. At a time when the world needs to work together, everyone's just pointing sharper and sharper spears at each other. Everyone's rushing to create their own war life insurance schemes. They say wars can start from a single misfired bullet. But what we're seeing in Ukraine isn't just bullets. It's artillery and missiles flying all over the place, and this could spread anywhere. World War III is becoming more and more of a real possibility. When will everyone finally wake up, put down their weapons, and join hands? Really, when will that moment ever come? On January 1, 2023, the U.S. foreign policy think tank Atlantic Council and the UK's Financial Times put together a list of global risk factors based on expert opinions. Here's what they came up with. 1. Never-ending wars. 2. Developing countries defaulting. 3. Iran getting nuclear weapons. 4. China pressuring Taiwan. 5. Backsliding on climate change efforts. These might look like separate issues, but actually, all 5 are connected organically. After COVID-19, the Russia-Ukraine war broke out, and globalization started falling apart. Then in October 2023, we got hit with another war, this time between Israel and Palestine. In 2023, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, warned that if the global economy hits stagflation, 1/3 of major bank assets could be at risk. Several developing countries have already declared default. And it's not just them, even major banks in developed countries that were thought to be stable are now hanging by a thread. Another change brought by the war is the collapse of globalization. The New York Times analyzed that while economic integration after the Cold War brought great stability, the Ukraine war is pushing the world in the opposite direction. On January 31, 1990, the first McDonald's opened in Pushkin Square in Moscow, Soviet Union, which was under a communist system at the time. The long lines that formed ahead of the opening of the first store became a symbol of the victory of capitalism while signaling the collapse of Soviet communism. However, when the war broke out, Western sanctions began and global companies started to join in. As McDonald's also decided to withdraw from Russia, at this point, Russia has been assessed as having ultimately returned to its original state. Economic integration couldn't withstand political division. The system where countries would get cheap raw materials and energy from Russia to make high-value finished products just stopped working properly. And now China's siding with Russia and building their own energy supply network. The world is splitting into several major economic blocks, and instead of free exchange, everyone's divided into us and them, only dealing with their own side. They're calling this de-globalization. Countries are forming alliances with their friends and taking sides against each other. When war broke out nearby, neighboring countries got worried about getting caught in the crossfire and started building up their militaries. This created power imbalances with their neighbors, leading to a domino effect of increasing military spending. In the middle of all this, some countries are deciding to get nuclear weapons. Iran has been rapidly expanding their uranium enrichment capabilities, and in 2022, they succeeded in producing 60% enriched uranium. That's just one step away from weapons grade. The CIA says there's a very high chance Iran will become a nuclear power. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland in May 2022, everyone was talking about deglobalization, the end of globalization, and decoupling. It's crazy. Just 2 years before, they were all excited about the opportunities from globalization and neoliberalism, but now the mood has completely flipped. After the first Cold War between the US and Soviet Union, we had 30 years of supply chains built on neoliberalism. Now analysts are saying that's falling apart, and we're heading into a new Cold War era with supply chains based on regionalism and nationalism. A lot of free countries have realized that being too interdependent can become a weapon against themselves. There's a war cloud hanging over Taiwan in Asia, too. People are saying it could become the next Ukraine. If war breaks out in Taiwan, there's a good chance it could spread to the Korean Peninsula, and then North Korea, which has been constantly expanding its military power and showing off its strength, might decide to make a move. Small wars breaking out in different places could spread worldwide. That's another World War III scenario. The tension is like a tightly drawn bowstring, and it's just speeding up everyone's self-destruction. Spring and fall are disappearing, sea levels are rising, and some island nations are about to go completely underwater. Yet everyone's so blinded by their own interests that they can't see the bigger picture. Maybe we'll all get wiped out by climate disaster even before World War III happens. If Ukraine's crisis is largely due to geopolitical reasons, the same goes for Korea. Ferdinando Nelli Ferrocci from the Italian Institute of International Affairs says we should change our expectations from complete victory to favorable peace negotiations, and predicts that the Ukraine war will most likely end in a Korea-style division. A Korea-style division means drawing a military demarcation line where neither Ukraine nor Russia achieves complete victory, and both sides end up governing their own territories. As the war drags on, it's unclear how long Western support for Ukraine will continue. Zelensky wants to join NATO, but the chances of that happening are pretty low. Initially, Ukraine received full-fledged support, but as the war has dragged on, the support continues to decrease. Russia is fighting the war with its own money, but Ukraine is fighting with other people's money. This is all debt, and this debt is likely to force Zelensky to make difficult choices someday. If the US stops its aid to Ukraine, European countries are likely to follow suit by delaying or stopping their aid too. This could leave Ukraine isolated and likely to crumble like a sandcastle. What could have been a favorable peace negotiation might turn into an unfavorable deal or even defeat. The momentum from Ukraine's summer 2023 counteroffensive has vanished, and they're struggling with limited supplies. This photo shows a Christmas tree made of spent shell casings that appeared in downtown Kyiv on Christmas Day. It seems to perfectly reflect their state of mind. Despite all their hardships, Ukraine isn't giving up. They're getting back on their feet. and they're looking to Korea as a model for their national reconstruction. Did you know that Korean content is now in Ukrainian textbooks? In May 2023, 4 10th grade world geography textbooks featuring Korea's development were officially approved and published after going through the Ukrainian Institute of Modernization's textbook qualification review and online voting by current teachers. These textbooks, which dedicate 6 to 9 pages to Korea as a separate chapter, explain how South Korea achieved unprecedented post-war economic growth through a mixed economic model with complementary government intervention. They highlight government education policy as another key factor in Korea's economic development model, emphasizing Korea's significant investment in education. They also introduce the Korean Wave and Korea's cutting-edge technology industries, explicitly identifying Korea as a leading nation in international economic relations. Ukraine and South Korea are remarkably similar. Their current situation mirrors our past and might also preview what we could face again in the future. That's why we need to pay close attention to the war in Ukraine.
That's all for today's video. This series about the Ukraine war will be a 5-part series. Don't miss the other videos. Please like and subscribe to our channel.